Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new Just No HOA content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, HOA member gets revenge on shitty lady. Okay, so there is this lady in my neighborhood's HOA, Homeowners Association, who gets extremely upset when people feed the ducks at our neighborhood pond because the ducks poop where they aren't supposed to, or something like that. So an old lady that is like 60 goes down to the pond and is feeding the ducks some grapes, and the lady, who I'll call Karen, sees her and walks down and starts screaming and cussing out this old lady for feeding the ducks. At the next HOA meeting, the old lady's daughter, who I'll call Diane, goes and starts cussing out Karen for screaming at her 60-year-old mom. The meeting was taking place at a pizza parlor, by the way. Diane is kicked off the HOA and Karen gets off scot-free. Well, a man, who we'll call Dave, goes and asks what that was about, and Diane tells him the whole story, and Dave is not happy. So he goes and buys about 60 pounds worth of bird feed, finds out where Karen's house is at, and makes a trail of bird feed leading from the pond to Karen's house. Once the trail gets to Karen's house, he covers her entire yard with bird feed. Karen lives about 2 houses down from me, so I could hear the scream when she woke up to see about every duck in our neighborhood, about 50 ducks, converging on her lawn. Her lawn is trashed with the ducks' poop and smells it. Long story short, Karen was kicked off the HOA and Diane was allowed back in and got some sweet revenge. Next one is titled, This Guy Was Crazy but at least he knew how to party. They had someone go around and check if the dogs are leashed, if not they call animal control to have them taken away. Yet HOA has called animal control on people who have their dogs leashed. Their reason? The length of the leash was either too long or too short. They tried to take away one guy's dogs for that reason, and that sparked a war between the HOA head and the homeowner, who was a former Marine, a former police officer, and all-around madman. HOA head did not stand a chance against a retired, crazy person who had a lot of time and money and was well liked in the neighborhood. What he did was completely not normal to the mostly conservative community, so they started calling him crazy, and it kinda stuck. Crazy guy built a pool and let everyone used it for free, making the $20 per month pool the HOA set up useless. Crazy guy also held a giant all-inclusive party that had menus for everyone's dietary needs. Any police officer that came to check on it left with to-go bags. They hated the head too. He also had a Halloween party, as the HOA did not allow trick or treating. The head was ousted from the HOA after she tried to break into Crazy Guy's house. She was the trophy wife of this big shot doctor, and her father owned most of the land in the neighborhood. She was losing support, and I don't think she was thinking at all, just desperation and anger running her in her system when she did it. The new head mellowed out some of the rules, but after this debacle, they realized that they didn't have much in the way of authority compared to before. The crazy guy never ran for HOA, but he did start a restaurant, sponsor a drag competition, and possibly took up karate. Next one is titled, HOA are basically drunk toddlers. To be fair, HOAs originally had some pretty decent ideas. You paid dues and didn't have to mow your lawn, clean your gutters, or shovel snow. Those were often services that were provided in exchange for the dues. In some places you had access to a community center with an arcade, pool, gym, banquet room, etc. In other words, you actually got something for the money. Unfortunately, like most things, the little bit of power that the officers of the HOA had went straight to their heads. I've never lived under an HOA, but my oldest brother has. He and his wife bought a cookie-cutter home in a cookie-cutter neighborhood in Southern California. There was no HOA when they bought the house. It showed up one day a couple of years later. He and his wife both worked, so they had not been able to attend the 2 p.m. meetings, imagine that, and neither had most of their neighbors. The next thing they know, they have to pay money monthly for snow removal, yard mowing, pool cleaning, and leaf raking. Did I mention this was Southern California? Yeah, not a lot of snow to shovel there. Everyone had to pay the same amount, even those without a pool. My brother had two big teenage boys that handled the postage stamp front yard mowing and cleaned the pool. For free. Now they had to pay for someone else to do it. In fact, they were prohibited from doing it. They were fined $1,000 for cleaning their own pool before their July 4th party. Would it surprise anyone here to know that one of the HOA founders had a son that had just started a lawn maintenance business and another had a son who started a pool cleaning business, and both companies were hired for those tasks? Probably not. One year my nephews got their mother a rose bush for Mother's Day. They planted it for her and were fined $500 because no one else had one. They had to transplant it to a pot instead. They still have it. Once they were fined $300 because my sister-in-law had the nerve to put up curtains in the front window that had a red backing to them and could be seen from the street. Only white was allowed. They were fined $500 because they had 3 cars. They also had a 3-car garage, but they were still fined for having excessive cars. They were fined $100 because Amazon left a package on their front porch instead of checking it in at the clubhouse, the house of the HOA president. You know, their own address instead of another address. They were told that they were in violation of HOA policies because they are not allowed to get packages at their own house. The last one was the final straw. My brother took the letter to a friend at work who was married to an attorney. She took it to the local postmaster. Turns out that fining people for getting their mail, many Amazon packages are delivered by the U.S. Postal Service, is actually a federal crime. She also contacted the state's attorney and the IRS in regards to the companies that were performing lawn and pool services. That HOA sort of collapsed about that time. The HOA got hit with a boatload of fines, but by then it didn't matter much to my brother and his family. They took their rosebush and moved. Next one is titled, Failed Attempt at Creating an HOA. So I live in an older subdivision. Most of the houses were built in 1958 to 1962. Back then, the neighborhood was about a mile away from the rest of the city, and it has since been swallowed up and then annexed in the early 2000s. There is no homeowners association in the neighborhood. We receive all of the benefits of living in the city, trash pickup, snow removal, etc., without having to pay any monthly or yearly fees. Our neighborhood has only 3 entrances, and a roundabout with a sign with the name of the neighborhood in the middle of it. Old retired teacher takes care of roundabout lawn and just built us a new sign. Roundabout is technically owned by the city. Anyways, a couple of the neighbors, notoriously nosy ones of course, decided to try and collect signatures to start an HOA in my neighborhood. Their reasoning was to create a neighborhood watch network and to create more uniformity among the homes, whatever that means. Out of 40-ish homes in the neighborhood, they got 2 signatures. 2. And I'm not positive that it wasn't the 2 neighbors that wanted it in the first place. I really feel that an HOA would absolutely ruin my neighborhood, not to mention, I don't think I would even need to follow any rules they create if the HOA wasn't on the deed in the first place. Anyways, I don't have any questions or anything. Just wanted to rant. I read these stories and it makes me so glad I bought a house where I did. Next one is titled, My HOA Experience. I'm a 41M. At an inexperienced age of 25 years and a bachelor, I grew tired of living in a low-rent apartment surrounded by less than lawful individuals and decided that a mortgage at the time would be only a little more per month and would make a great investment. Oh, to go back in time and give myself a talk, because what I learned was that living in an HOA only makes you a glorified renter. At the end of the day you own nothing. The condo I purchased was very nice. 1300 SQFT 3BR, 2-bath, vaulted ceilings, thick walls. I was pretty impressed with myself. Unfortunately, the HOA was not well managed. The board was nothing more than puppets for the management company who might as well been the landlord. It was a large HOA, 26 buildings with 12 units each. I learned in comparison to friends that this was a good thing as it meant assessment fees were more spread out. When I moved in I didn't know about assessment fees and I was barely educated on the HOA fee. One of the selling points was the low HOA fee. Only $80 a month. But later I found out the developer who was still finishing the last 4 buildings supplemented the fee to keep it low so he could sell more units. I also didn't know that my HOA was a sub-HOA. Which means it was an HOA inside an HOA. So I had to pay the master HOA another $25 a month to do nothing at all. Literally nothing but the privilege of living in an HOA that was part of a collection of other HOAs. The sub-HOAs did all the internal maintenance and the city itself took care of the HOA communal areas like the public roads. Meanwhile my sub-HOA board was full of out-of-state Southern Californians in a snow-heavy state. My first year there they budgeted $2,000 for snow removal and $45,000 for beautification, new wood chips and remodel the clubhouse. Meanwhile the snow removal fee came to $35,000. At the HOA meeting to vote on how to pay the $35,000 snow fee they banned anyone from talking about how we got into that mess and anyone who did was arrested for disorderly conduct by the police standing by, on request of the management company. Eventually, they voted on an assessment fee which came to $350-ish for each unit. Later I learned the plow company was owned by the management company owner's relative. That plow guy came out if there was a barely visible frost on the ground and charged us $100 per push, every time he backed up and drove forward. Eventually, the HOA board was replaced and they replaced the management company with a new company. The new company liked to play with the pool keys and charge you to turn them back on. They always tried to claim your card was read at the pool during an unauthorized time, or that card you were using was a fake that they didn't issue. The 2008 recession hit without selling the last of the units. The developer backed out of supplementing the fees and the fee jumped $65 and $10 the next year. Probably even higher later, but I moved out. The developer screwed up and didn't have room to give the last building or so their 2 parking spots, one covered. So now the HOA wanted to revoke everyone's second spot. Problem: the second spot was on my mortgage and bylaws provided for a second spot. The HOA dropped the revoked spot idea but I do not know how they eventually solved it. Last, I overpaid my HOA every month for dues, placing me several hundred over as insurance against the next assessment fee. So I paid a little amount for the HOA to install a screen on my dryer vent to keep the birds out against my credit. I also paid for several upgrades inside to sell the place. Unfortunately, when I tried to sell, the recession was at its worst and I sold at a loss to get out of there and buy a house. The last insult of this HOA was to claim I never paid for the screen on my dryer vent and that I owed a few hundred in back HOA fees. If I didn't pay they would place a lien on me which would mess with the condo I sold and the house I was buying. So I paid the ransom and walked away from that dumpster fire. The good news is the house I bought was no HOA and has tripled in value. I do know the master HOA was eventually sued by all the sub-HOAs and dissolved because they did nothing but rent an office down the street. I've also ran into people who still own in my old sub-HOA. And yes, the fee is now much higher. Last one is titled, HOA Parking Nightmare. This seemed like a good place to share a recent nightmare we had with the HOA. Our HOA sucks, don't most? From a lien being put on the house for less than $200, to complaints about weeds when we had obvious construction going on at the house after it flooded, there has been some stupid crap. A recent one really pushed some buttons though. My parents plan to move in the next few years and they will be avoiding HOAs. Here's how the story goes. We have 4 vehicles, 3 cars and a truck. We have a 2-car garage that we use for storage and it's honestly small. Trying to fit 2 cars in there would be pretty much impossible unless they were tiny. They decided not to bother trying to park in there though, it's more useful for storage. So we park 1 car and the truck in the driveway and 2 cars on the street. Just a note, at one point the HOA tried to make it against the rules to park on the street but they were shot down on that. My parents got a letter from a lawyer, rather than from the HOA directly, about a complaint about us parking in the street. two important facts about this. The HOA was charging her the legal fee. They never bothered to contact her directly about this, just went straight to the lawyer. And it said specifically not to contact the HOA directly regarding this and to only contact the lawyer. So my mom contacted the lawyer, talked about the complaint. They asked about the garage and if it was being used, and she said it was. They asked if it was for cars and she said no, it's storage. They go over the details and that seems like it's it. They get another letter from the lawyer a while later saying that they did find them to be in violation of the rules. One of the rules was that the garage must be fully utilized before you are allowed to park on the street. It doesn't specify that it has to be by vehicles. That garage is fully utilized, but the lawyer was interpreting it to mean it had to be vehicles even though that is not stated. I believe they were giving 2 weeks to clean out the garage and park 2 of the cars in there. The letter also stated that since my mom had contacted the lawyer regarding this, that she now owed additional legal fees. Remember how the first one said not to contact the HOA and to contact the lawyer? Yeah, it mentioned no fees as part of that. My mom contacted the HOA about it at that point and had plenty of complaints. The legal fees was one of them. There was no reason to go directly to a lawyer about this and she was never informed beforehand. A big one was if they really expected us to rotate our vehicles on a daily basis. The truck is not going to fit in the garage. Mine and my dad's cars might. This whole BS seemed like it would result in 2 cars in the garage and the truck and third car parked directly behind them in the driveway. The person she spoke to say they didn't expect them to do that. Then what was the problem to begin with? Even if we clean out the garage and park 2 cars in there, we would still have 2 on the street. It would just leave our driveway empty. I think they realized the stupidity behind this whole thing at that point because we did not make a single change. We still parked 2 vehicles in the driveway and 2 in the street. A few months after that phone call, she got a letter from them saying that we are now in compliance. Thanks for listening.